Hello everyone and welcome to the Constructive Criticism Network. This network is here to help you improve at Magic the Gathering at every level. From Pauper Leagues to Top 1000 Mythic, we've got you covered. If you want to hear the entire network, head on over to our sponsor at puremtgo.com, where you can hear each and every show, each and every week, and check out their sponsor, MTGO Traders, and tell them that the CCMTG Network sent you. Now sit back, enjoy the show. From YouTube, podcasts, and more, here's this week's episode from ConstructiveCriticism.com.
How's it going, everybody? It is 11:30 a.m. Saturday, February 13th, 2021, and it's time for this, the 103rd trip down the Homeward Path. My name is Adam, and I got a few questions for you. Are you a fan of Magic the Gathering? I mean, I really hope so, since we're presumably consuming a podcast about it. Do you have something else in your life that takes precedence over any magical accomplishments you might have? Listen, I understand. Job, career, spouse, partner, children, any combination of all of the above. I've got a wife and 3 children myself, and I work 42 hours a week. So I feel you. I understand. But in spite of that, are you using every resource at your disposal, despite them being limited, to find ways to improve your Magic game at every turn? Because if that sounds like you, I hope you're attacking alone, because I'm going to call you the Exalted One. So we're going to dive in and look at some of the ways we can improve through budgeting, brewing, and breaking bad habits after a word from our sponsors. Listen, the grind on MTG Arena can feel relentless, like you're trying to make your way through a horde of imaginary enemies and you're not equipped with anything to fight them with. That's where our newest sponsor comes in. Great Viking Games, with access to endless codes for Arena to get you either the cosmetics that the cosmetics you desired but couldn't get when they came out, or didn't want to get the secret layer in order to get them, or promo pack codes, pre-release codes without having to go get the paper cards if paper cards aren't your bag. Whatever the case may be, you can find your way to glory at Great Viking Games. And if you use our affiliate code HWPMTG in the promo code section at checkout, you get 5% off your order. They know we sent you. GreatVikingGames.com. Go check it out. While you're on there checking stuff out, don't forget to check out our other sponsor at PureMTGO.com. PureMTGO is less of an armorer and more of a guide. They just point you in the right direction to find your way through. PureMTGO is one of the largest collections of Magic content on the web. They've got something for everyone, and they can make sure you're headed the right way. Keep you on the path. But while you're perusing, looking for someone to help guide you on your way, don't forget to check out our parent network over at ConstructiveCriticism.com. Everybody's doing great work over there right now, so you should probably, it would be well worth your time. It's a waste of time not to go. Check out the content on the web. They're a collection of some of the best content creators on the web, and then there's me. So go check them out. And if you like what we're doing enough to help me keep doing it, patreon.com/HomewardPathMTG. Everything I do, every major piece of content I put out is going to be free. But if you like what we're doing enough to, 1, help me keep doing it, and 2, have a more direct say in what we're doing, become a patron of the show. So with all that out of the way, let's dive into our topics. Our budget spotlight this week, similar to the last couple of weeks when we've been covering these shards, we're going to feature 1 card from each color, and then 1 card that's all 3 colors at the end. So our white card, white being comprising the core of the shard of Bant. It's the primary color with each of its 2 allies, blue and green. The white card in question is Path to Exile. Path to Exile is a single white mana instant. Exile target creature, its controller, rampant growths. So, on the surface, this thing is just really, really good, right? Like, if you tell me for 1 mana, I can exile target creature, I'm already in. Like, I'm already all the way in. As long as the drawback isn't debilitating, if it's not like sacrifice a land myself or something. If it's not, debilitating to my ability to continue to function playing Magic, I'm in for 1 mana exile target creature. But the fact that it's not take something away from me, it's I'm going to give you something for your trouble. That's way better, right? And the thing about Path to Exile is the bigger the format, the more powerful it becomes, with the possible exception of Commander. When this card was in Standard, it was a hard card to play correctly because you would sometimes ramp your opponent off of their 3 or 4 drop directly into their 6-drop Broodmate Dragon, or directly into their Avenger of Zendikar, or directly into whatever it was that they actually planned on killing you with, while you were concerned about this other thing. There were more expensive, more powerful cards waiting in the wings every time you tried to take care of one. But the further back you go, the less likely that is to happen, because either the more powerful spells are non-creature or are difficult enough to interact with anyway, or they're just not seeing play. You look at Modern, they might get to cast an extra spell along the same power level lines as what they've been doing, but by and large, a lot of your decks in Modern are built around 1 and 2 mana spells, so what's 1 more land? You just empty their hand faster and you can resource grind them from there. That seems fine, right? And then it gets even worse when you go back into Legacy. Like, it gets even stronger when you go back into Legacy and there's just less lands. And not for nothing, but the power level for dollar amount is there. This card is $3. $3. And sometimes you really need to be able to exile target creature. Whether it's a Merit Lage token, it could be an indestructible creature with a lot of auras strapped to it. It could be, I don't know, a creature with regenerate that you need to get off the table, a creature that, prevents all damage to it. You're going to have a lot of trouble with it in combat. And then there's, of course, the mana efficiency argument, giving that as long as this thing trades with a creature that costs 2 or more, you're breaking mana efficient. You're breaking out of this with a lead in mana efficiency, because you presumably get to cast an extra spell after dealing with their threat. So just top to bottom, this card is phenomenal, and you can do way worse for a $3 investment. Next up on the agenda is our green card, and this one is one of those cards you don't want to path your opponent into. Nissa, Who Shakes the World, has been a format-defining force since she was printed. She's 3 and double green for a 5 loyalty planeswalker. Static ability: whenever you tap a forest for mana, add an additional green. +1, untap target non-creature land you control. Put 3 +1/+1 counters on it. It becomes a 0/0 elemental with vigilance and haste. So, face value, if all you do is resolve Nissa and activate the +1 one time, if you never get to untap with this card, the net cost of 3 mana, because you are untapping presumably a forest, so you're going to have access to 2 mana. The net cost of 3 mana, because you spend 5, get 2 back. You get a 3/3 creature and a 6 loyalty planeswalker. If you never untap with Nissa, you spend 3 mana to get a 3/3 creature and a 6 loyalty planeswalker. That's one heck of a trained Armadon, if I've ever seen one, right? That's really good. Whether you're using that 3/3 creature to cast another creature to help protect Nissa, or cast an interactive spell, be it a counter spell, removal spell, burn spell, cantrip after blocking, whatever. Right? Just spending 3 mana to get a 3/3 creature and a planeswalker that they have to deal with is a big deal. And I've vastly underrated this card. I'm reasonably certain I've talked about Nissa on this show before, and I'm going to talk about her again because she's so stinking good. I don't even care what the ultimate is. For the record, the ultimate is -8. Go get all the forests out of your library and put them onto the battlefield tapped. That's what the ultimate is. And you get an emblem with lands you control are indestructible. So, yeah. That's also really good, because now you're drawing gas the rest of the way. Or at least presumably drawing many less lands. And have access to literally every spell you could fathom casting in your library. So, top to bottom, this card's power level is absurd. When the fail state is a 3 mana 3/3 that leaves behind a 6 mana or 6 loyalty planeswalker, or a 3 mana 6 loyalty planeswalker that leaves behind a 3/3 creature. And if you ever do get to untap with this thing, I would put Nissa Who Shakes the World in the similar category to a card like Dream Trawler, to a card like Niv-Mizzet Parun, to a card like what was it? What did I do last week? To a series of cards that we've talked about on this show, where it has that hidden line of text that says if you untap with this card, you should probably win the game. Because you absolutely should. This thing is absurd. It's insane. There is no good reason for this card to only be $5.50. This card should have been a mythic. That's how powerful it is. Whether you're chaining Massive Hydroid Krasis, casting Finale of Devastation in order to just let one of those forest creatures you've made churn through your opponent's life total, casting a really big dumb spell like an Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger, Ugin the Spirit Dragon, whatever. This thing is dumb. And going from a card that should have been a mythic to a card that is a mythic and somehow still cheap, we have Seagate Stormcaller in blue. Seagate Stormcaller is 1 and a blue for a 2/1. Kicker of 4 and a blue. When this creature enters the battlefield, copy the next instant or sorcery spell you cast this turn with converted mana cost 2 or less. If this spell was kicked, copy it twice. So we don't want to talk about the 7 mana version of this card, because by the time you're casting this for 7 mana and another spell, the game is already over one way or the other, right? So the version of this card I want to talk about, and the reason I put this card on this list, is the 2 mana version of Seagate Stormcaller. Copying 1 instant or sorcery 1 time. Just getting 1 extra copy. Listen, even looking at the standard format, we've got cards like Opt. We've got cards like Blood Chief's Thirst. We've got cards like Shock. We've got cards like Revitalize. We've got cards like Ram Through. We've got cards like Crash Through. We've got just a ton of available resources to use with Seagate Stormcaller specifically to generate back tempo that you lost earlier in the game. Potentially to massive advantages, right? Like the idea of Seagate Stormcaller into Blood Chief's Thirst to catch up against aggro decks. That's not nothing. Like, you get beat down for a couple of turns, they go Fervent Champion, Robber of the Rich, and then on your turn 3 on the play, you just go Seagate Stormcaller, double Blood Chief's Thirst, get them out of here. And put up a blocker for their follow-up 3-drop, and just have a counter for Embercleave available. That's what you gotta do. But, because they always have the Embercleave, don't pretend they don't. But like, top to bottom, this card as a way to catch up on tempo is really, really good. And then there's the fact that it can help you fix your hand in conjunction with cantrips. You know, Revitalize gains 6 life, so it negates part of a combat phase and draws 2 cards. Opt, scry 1, draw 1 twice. Crash Through, draw 2 cards. 1 mana. Sum total of 3 mana, get a creature, draw 2 cards. Village Rites is the most busted of the group when it comes to fixing your hand, because you trade Seagate Stormcaller and Village Rites for 4 cards from the top of your library. That's a 4 for 2. Come on! That's gross, right? And then you just set up and do it again the next turn, because presumably you have Lurrus in your deck, because, like me, you don't like having friends. You know, if you're going to go down that road, you probably want to have Lurrus in your deck. But I digress. The fair modes on Seagate Stormcaller are really good. And then there's the unfair one that I'm contractually obligated to point out, which is technically grounds to put this card on the Teamer episode as well, but I'm not going to do that to y'all. I'll find another Teamer card, or I'll find a better blue card for Teamer. But Neoform. This card with Neoform. The combo, as it were, is to get access to 4 mana by turn 3, and you cast Seagate Stormcaller into Neoform, sacrificing Seagate Stormcaller. You get 2 copies of Neoform, each able to go get you a 3-drop or less creature from your library. Go get Dualcaster Mage copies Neoform, go get another Dualcaster Mage, and you keep looping like that till you run out of Dualcasters, and then you start going and getting Glasspool Mimics, which enter the battlefield as copies of Dualcaster Mage. And you get all of those on the table, and then finally you go get a Haste Enabler, and you kill your opponent. And this is a deck that is currently legal in Historic and Modern as far as formats that are like, where it's remotely good. Technically it's legal in Legacy, but I don't know if it's good. It's not legal in Pioneer because Dualcaster Mage has not been printed into a Pioneer legal set. And there's not another creature at 3 mana that will copy the Neoform on entering the battlefield. So you'd have to bump it up to turn 4, or accelerate more. You know, 1-drop accelerator into 3-drop creature into Seagate Neoform, and then you can go get 4 drops and do the same thing. Presuming, of course, they don't kill your 3-drop. But that's the unfair mode, as it were, with Seagate Stormcaller, is anything that lets you go get stuff out of your deck. It's kind of broken, right? Right. And last but not least, we're going to talk about Seagate Stormcaller, by the way, is at a price tag of $3. This is a mythic rare with potentially busted in half implications, and it is $3. Don't tell me this thing ain't good. This thing's really good. It's really good. And last but not least, we're going to talk about a commander option and a card that has a little bit of value in 60-card formats if you're willing to put in the work to build it. And that card is Rafiq of the Many. Rafiq is 1, a white, a blue, and a green. For a 3/3, Rafiq has Exalted. So whenever a creature you control attacks alone, that creature gets +1/+1. And whenever a creature you control attacks alone, that creature gains double strike until end of turn. So, Rafiq, right off the rip, turns out granting double strike to anything is really strong. Like even the fair modes of this card are really good in 60-card formats. If you go turn 1 Noble Hierarch, turn 2 Knight of the Reliquary, turn 3 Rafiq in Modern, and you have 2 fetch lands inserted into the equation along that sequence, this thing's going to deal a massive amount of damage. An unreasonable amount of damage. Because Knight of the Reliquary on turn 2, turn 3, fetch land Rafiq, Declare attack with Knight of the Reliquary alone. Knight of the Reliquary is vigilance. Activate. Sacrifice a land, go get another fetch. Sacrifice fetch, go get another land. So you've got, what, 4 lands in the graveyard. So Knight's a 6/6, gets +2/+2 from Rafik and Noble Hierarch. Double strike makes it 16. You casually treat your opponent's life total like it starts at 14 in most games of Modern. That's ridiculous. That's a fair mode of Rafik. That's the fair version of Rafik. And then there's Commander, where you can play it either as a Voltron strategy unto itself, where you combine Rafik with haste enabling equipments and power granting equipments to just Voltron your opponent to death out of nowhere, or you combine the Voltron-y approach of Rafik with something my friend Matt did, which is to play it with Oath of Druids and Serra Avatar. So that you can play like one Serra Avatar and one other creature in your deck. Oath of Druids is going to come down, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if an opponent has more creatures than you, you are going to exile cards from the top of your library until you hit a creature and just floop that creature into play. Serra Avatar's power and toughness are equal to your life total. So haste granting equipment, 40 in the air is a lot. 38 in the air is a lot. 38 in the air with double strike is lethal. I don't care what game you're playing. 72 is a lot. All right? It's a lot of anything. And then in conjunction with a card like Finest Hour, you then get to untap and attack somebody else for more. Come on. That's disgusting. And this card, again, we're talking about it largely in the context of Commander, where you only need to get one, and this card is $9. That's not bad. That's not a bad price. So moving on, we got our brew of the week, and this one I got to apologize because I wrote this episode last week and did not have time to get it recorded before the weekend, before the next work week started. And then the announcement came out 2 days before recording that they were planning on banning Uro in Modern and Historic. So take this bit with a grain of salt. But our brew of the week is Bant ramp / midrange in Historic. The core concept is, think of all of the powerful cards in the past 2 standards. Uro, Nissa, Krasis, Elspeth Conquers Death, Carnage Tyrant. Like, dumb green, blue, and white stuff. Just good magic cards. Baneslayer Angel. Lyra Dawnbringer. I don't care what you're about. If it's good and it's green, blue, or white, it probably has a home within some variation on this concept. As, you know, your payoff for playing these colors. You just get to play really, really, really stinking good magic cards. Right? Next, think about all the powerful potential enablers. Growth Spiral, Explore, Arboreal Grazer, Cultivate. Migration Path, if that's your bag. Thunderherd Migration, if that's your bag. Whatever, right? Accelerating into powerful spells. And last but not least, the role players. Cards like, removal spells like Doomscar or Shatter the Sky. Card draw in the form of I'm drawing a blank. Even as there's all kinds of powerful options available to you that don't require you to go too far out of the lane of play really good cards and win games of Magic. Between removal, card draw, counter magic, card advantage threats, Elder Gargaroth comes to mind. You're going to be dense in the 4 and 5 drop area because so many of the best cards are in that area. Customization? Well, there's a lot of engines worth playing or splashing. If you're interested in big aggro, Conclave Mentor, Rishkar, Adonis Climb are available. It's a deck. It's a style of deck that I've seen before. Even without access to Conclave Mentor, you can just play some stuff that cares about +1/+1 counters. Like Hydroid Krasis gets a little bit better when you can put extra counters on it. The creature's more of a threat earlier in the game. I mean, just all the way around, this is really, really good. The Flood of Tears combo is available. If that's something you're interested in, playing Tamiyo with Flood of Tears to recycle over and over, bounce and bounce and replay and bounce and replay and bounce and replay, and just, you know, in conjunction with Omniscience, you bounce your opponent's board, go through your deck until you find a threat that kills them. There's enough juice in Simic for an elemental sub-theme. The two Cavaliers, Risen Reef, even just going no further than that. If you dip into Pioneer for this, you also get access to cards like Master of Waves. Master of Waves in conjunction with Risen Reef is kind of hilarious. Bant Gyruda can play some of these cards effectively. Notably, I guess it's actually better in the context of what we're talking about, considering we can't play Uro anymore anyway. But like, you know, Growth Spiral, 2-drop accelerators, Explore, Migration Path, Circuitous Route if you want to go that route. Circuitous route, it's the same word. I use both pronunciations because I'm a monster. And even going up to 80 cards just for Yorion just gives you some more room for awesome Magic cards, and you can play a Blink sub-theme with cards like Thassa, Deep Dwelling, Panharmonicon if that's your bag, if you are like Saffron Olive and like do-nothing cards that generate massive advantages if you get to untap with them. It's whatever, right? You know, stuff like Elite Guard Mage, Risen Reef, the Cavaliers, all give you something to do. And then sideboard options abound, from solid removal and disruption to outright hosers in the form of cards like Rest in Peace, Grafdigger's Cage, whatever you're about. You got them. Aether Gust, Mystical Dispute. Like, you've got access to a lot of tools. You can even do an enchantment sub-theme with cards like Stesson Champion, joining the ranks of some of these other cards, and then you play a card like Dance of the Manse in order to return a bunch of them to play at once. Whatever your bag is, whatever you're interested in doing, there's something available to do in Bant. Let me tell you. So let's dive into our main topic, which is, I lovingly referred to this episode as Playful Banter. Because, again, monster. What is Bant? Bant is another of the 5 Shards of Alara and locus of green, white, and blue mana. In the absence of ambition, rage, and chaos, Bant is ruled by a common desire for the greater good, with ritual combat as the primary means of dispute resolution when diplomacy fails. Which is to say, in place of massive battles between armies and thousands of people, when there is a dispute that requires bloodshed to resolve, the soldiers of Bant don't army up and go swinging at each other and spill a lot of unnecessary blood. That's not what they do. They send one champion forward, use their magic to pour all of their strength into that champion, and the winning champion wins the dispute. That's the end of it. And I gotta say, that has a nice ring to it. It is notably the first place Gideon went when his Planeswalker Spark ignited, as well as the place that gave him his, quote, Planeswalker name. Obviously, those of you who follow the lore or who have played since Magic Origins know that Gideon's original name, his given name on Theros, was Kithian Eora. But as a Planeswalker, he was named Gideon Jura, or Gideon Ura. Because, presumably at least, the locals on Theros just couldn't pronounce his name. Or not on Theros, on Alara, the Shard of Bant. They just couldn't pronounce his name. They struggled pronouncing the word Kithian, and I don't really blame them. Strictly speaking, I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying I get it. And it's primarily home to human, rocks, Aven, and angels, along with their Leotar mounts. Oh, I don't need to go that way. Which Leotar being the semi-sentient cat creatures that they ride into battle. So, has its pros and cons. From a mechanical identity, in block, it was executed as flawlessly as I've ever seen a mechanical identity executed by Magic. The Exalted mechanic is a perfect realization of the belief in the style of combat that Bant is known for. Creatures with Exalted give power and toughness, a power and toughness boost to other creatures, to any creature that attacks alone. That's the long and short of it. That's what Bant was about in limited and in constructed play during its run in standard. The Exalted mechanic played a major part in the success of the actual named Bant cards. You emphasized putting a lot of creatures into play, but you only wanted to attack with one of them at a time. You only put one of them into harm's way at a time, and presumably stacked enough bonuses on top that they weren't really ever in any danger. In other sets, Bant tends to favor a sort of go tall mid-range approach, where the quality of your threats matters a whole lot more than how many of them you have. Which is to say, you don't want to flood the board with lots of cheap creatures in your average Bant mid-range deck. You just want to put really good Magic cards on the table and make your opponent figure out how to deal with them. And from a competitive history standpoint, Bant's got kind of a weird one for me, at least. Again, I started playing in 2004, and I never really encountered a truly competitively viable Bant deck until the namesake, until Bant became a shard in Shards of Alara block. And the first deck I really played and experienced that was Bant in flavor, even if it was 4 colors, was Dark Bant during the Lore 1 Alara standard season. Was designed to curve out like so. Turn 1 Noble Hierarch or Birds of Paradise, turn 2 Doran the Siege Tower, turn 3 Rafika the Many. That's what you were interested in doing in this deck. Noble Hierarch or Birds of Paradise, 1-drop mana dork, Doran the Siege Tower, Rafik. You wanted that Doran to be attacking for as much as 14 on turn 3. Was technically 4C, but I mean, this was very much just a big Bant Exalted deck. It was a deck that was really popular for like a month and then just kind of fell off because of how utterly laughably ineffective it was against a card like Bitter Blossom, which could just hold your massive Doran at bay forever. They could trade 1 life to not take any damage. The next one, and this one we'll go into my opinion on the matter. The name of the deck was Mythic, and it was so named because it was largely designed around just playing a lot of the most powerful cards in Magic at the time. Lotus Cobra, Knight of the Reliquary, Rampaging, what was that card's name? Not Rampaging Rhinos. I can't remember the name of the card. It may have been Rampaging Rhinos, I'm not sure. The 6/6 beast for 6 that whenever you landfall, you would make a 4/4. But it was built around the idea, similar to the Conley Woods Magical Christmas Land deck, of playing Lotus Cobra, making massive amounts of mana on turn 3, and having access to 6-drop creatures on turn 3. Stop me if you've heard that before. 6-drop creatures on turn 3 seem to be a thing that tends to be pretty powerful. This was my pick for one of the most powerful standard decks of all time. This V. Moshowitz masterpiece was a masterclass in balancing ramp and mid-range together. Again, the idea was to just make massive amounts of mana in the early portion of the game and just keep playing a threat that would dominate the game until your opponent died. It was the only deck to truly unseat Jund as the best deck during the era, as this deck was just objectively more powerful. Because Jund would have to not play its threats in order to keep yours from killing them. They had to waste time that they didn't have. Broodmate Dragon doesn't beat Baneslayer Angel. Siege Gang Commander doesn't beat the Rampaging Rhino dude. Knight of the Reliquary is bigger than anything they have at under 5 mana. The combo variant is where things really got kicked into overdrive. And this is the version I would put as my, like a top 5 standard deck I've ever experienced. The combo variant realized that, 6-drop creatures didn't have to be like medium good on their own. They could just be really stupid powerful thanks to Rise of the Eldrazi. It was a card that had not seen any play in its time in Standard until Rise of the Eldrazi gave them, what is that card's name? Eldrazi Conscription. Now, Eldrazi Conscription is notably a very difficult to utilize aura. It's like I think it's an 8 or 10 mana aura, but it gives the enchanted creature +10/+10, flying and Annihilator 2. And the 6-drop in question was Sovereigns of Lost Alara. Sovereigns of Lost Alara being 4, a blue and a white, buys you a 4/4 with Exalted, and then whenever a creature you control attacks alone, you can search your library for an aura card and attach it to that creature. So, let's run down the list, shall we? Turn 1, Bird of Paradise, Noble Hierarch. Turn 2, Knight of the Relic, or turn 2, yeah. Is it? Yeah. No. Turn 2, either Knight of the Reliquary or Lotus Cobra, because you have access to the extra mana. You'd get both by the end of the turn. You'd cast Lotus Cobra, play fetch, sacrifice fetch, tap the land for mana. You'd have access to 3, cast Knight of the Reliquary. Turn 3, fetch land, activate. Activate Knight of the Reliquary, go get fetch land, activate fetch land, get untap land. Tap the 2 lands you've just put into play. You got 6 mana, cast Sovereigns. Attack with Bird of Paradise. Bird of Paradise gets +1/+1 and +10/+10. That Bird of Paradise just attacked your opponent for 13. And they have to kill it now, or it's going to wreck their lands. There's objectively very few things I've ever experienced in Magic that were that powerful. So, forgive me if I gush over this deck a lot, because it's just one of my favorites ever. And last but not least, most recently, is Bant Reclamation from 2019 Standard. A change of pace as compared to every other iteration of Bant we've talked about. This deck was more focused on leveraging non-creature permanents and one particularly annoying instant, that instant being Nexus of Fate. You would play Nexus of Fate alongside Wilderness Reclamation, Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, and your goal was to just take as many turns in a row as you could, And you would either win with Teferi's emblem being able to consistently plink away at your opponent's board till it was gone after you take like 7 turns in a row, or by taking 3 or 4 turns in a row with a Hydra Crisis, you could kill them. Even without the quote-unquote combo, you had the capacity to beat them the fair way because you were still playing Growth Spiral, Nissa, and Hydra Crisis. So, like, they constantly had to worry about you going Reclamation, untap, Nexus at end of turn, take another turn, start going off. But in addition to that, you could also just beat them because your cards were good. Like, you had the traditional Bant mid-range thing going on where Nissa could run the table on them, Crisis could run the table on them, Growth Spiral would accelerate you into Wilderness Reclamation or any of the aforementioned powerful threats earlier. Like, Teferi Time Raveler did a good job of restricting your opponent's capacity to interact. It was just really, really good. Got Nexus of Fate banned. A version of this deck that was playing Expansion Explosion later after Nexus of Fate got banned eventually got Teferi Time Raveler, Growth Spiral, and Wilderness Reclamation banned. So, I mean, it's just really, really good. Really good. So that's all I got for Bant, everybody. Turns out when you put Simic plus another color that just likes to play good Magic cards together, you get something that's really, really, really good at accelerating into and leveraging really powerful threats and engines. That's what Bant's about. At the end of the day, I know from a lore standpoint, they're about creatures and making creatures big and going in combat. But the best Bant decks don't look like that. So, that's all I've got for this week. I apologize for the late upload. We have been in disarray at home, in large part due to the fact that Sarah just had surgery, and we've been kind of trying to get all the preparations made for that. And now she is in recovery, but she's home and bed, on bed rest until she, for at least a week, probably 2, maybe 3. So we're having to be super dad for a little bit, and I'm not used to doing that. I'm not generally very good at that. So apologies for the late upload. It was supposed to be out last week. It did not get out. But that's all I've got. Again, we're going to save the dad jokes for another good, either another good episode with a co-host or another good episode where they feel really appropriate. But if you've got them, keep sending them in. I will compile a list of my favorites to use for said episode. And with that, you got questions, you got comments, you got concerns, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at HomewardPathMTG. On Facebook, my name is Adam Spain. You can join the conversation in the Facebook group Homeward Pathfinders. If you're a patron, you have access to the Patron Pathfinders Discord where we discuss episode topics. Your deck can go to the front of the line of Brew of the Week. If you are a $5 or more patron each month, you get your very own episode. Like, we write the episode you want me to do, collaboratively together. So, with that in mind, I will leave you with the final words of wisdom from Peter Capaldi's doctor as he regenerated. We've got a lot going on in this world right now. Everybody's going through something. There's a lot to be upset about. But please remember, when interacting with people, when dealing with people who upset you, or don't upset you, whatever, never be cruel, never be cowardly. Remember, hate is always foolish, love always wise. Always try to be nice, but never fail to be kind. So laugh hard, play a bunch of good Magic cards, and be kind. And we'll catch you next episode.